Germany and England are probably the strongest military. Where's the United States here?
This is like the beginning of World War I, right?
We're
Yeah.
not in it.
We would say like 1910. Let's say 1910 before the war starts.
We were like on our own. We're doing our own thing.
We are what was called diplomatic isolationists. What does that mean?
We just worry about ourselves.
Diplomatic isolationism. We weren't economic, and I'll go ahead and put this up here just to make sure. Isolationism, you can understand this, right? To isolate yourself means that you're not connected. But are we, and this is the U.S., are we culturally isolated? No. We have immigrants coming in from all over the place. In fact, we have so many immigrants by the 1880s that we make sure that they all come into certain ports so that we can process them. There's still, everyone is able to come in, but we have to identify who's coming in. And if you are carrying the plague, or if you have absolutely no means to support yourself, you don't get to come in. But for the most part, there's no quotas, there's no limits. Everyone can come in as long as you're not sick and you're not so poor that you have no job. You have to have the prospect of a job, and you have to not be sick and dying and plague-ridden. But beyond that, everybody comes in. So we have no cultural isolation. What about economic isolation? We're trading with everybody. So we have no, in fact, we like what's called free trade, open doors policy. What that means is it's free trade. You guys don't know how this is too different today, because a lot of our treaties today are based off of free trade. Free trade means that I trade with you, you trade with me, we don't have any taxes on it, we don't have any barriers. We can trade with anybody. That was an American idea. In imperialism, do you believe in free trade? Why not?
You owe money to the...
No, not, remember mercantilism? The money,
You like trading with yourself.
yes,
Oh,
your
yeah.
colonies are bringing in the raw materials, right? If your colonies are trading with other people, then they're not going to you. So you need the raw materials, and so they don't believe in free trade. So that means that you have the English country, and then France might be right next door, and they may have a colony right next door, but these colonies cannot trade with each other. That's one of the reasons why we had the French-Indian War in the 1700s. You're not supposed to trade with each other, because if you do, the raw material won't go back to the mother country, it'll go back to your competitor. And in mercantilism, more gold should be coming in than going out. It's just the basis of a profit. And so, the United States, this is one of the reasons why we got into our Declaration of Independence, is that we didn't like being a colony. We didn't like having that limitation. We believed everyone should be trading with everybody. Not just the mommy countries, but also the little kids should be trading with everybody. So we are not isolation. We're the exact opposite of isolations. So then the last thing that we have here is diplomatic. What does that mean, diplomacy?
Like the president, like we have a president and we all have like, not all of them, but like have like kings and stuff, they all have to like...
Close.
I mean,
You're
I don't know
thinking of the concept of diplomacy, which means kind of the order of the politics. But we're not thinking in that term. It's got a different meaning. Go ahead.
Actually, I was going to say, like, political.
What about it?
Like we don't want to be politically connected to everybody.
That's what we're talking about. Okay, the best way to describe this is alliance.
I was like, oh boy, I was afraid that
Think
was
of
wrong.
military
Also, like we don't really have...
Like,
or like...
and
no,
political
no.
alliances. We do not have alliances with anybody.
What?
We do not have alliances with anybody.
we like to be our own
Diplomatically
Yeah.
isolationist. So this is because of this empires. Part of it is because we are no empires. We do not believe in empire. So if we don't believe in empire, then we don't have any concerns about what our colonies are doing, because we don't have any colonies, right? So we're not in an alliance. This is really important to understand. When World War I starts, are we naturally preferring England or naturally preferring Germany?
We preferred ourselves.
No, Britain, because we had trade with them.
But when was the last time we had a war? Who did we have it with?
With Britain.
With Britain in the Napoleonic Wars. In fact, before that, it was with Britain in the American Revolution. So we don't have a natural connection with England. And not only that, you guys are in Wisconsin, right? Who is the biggest ethnic group in Milwaukee? German. German beer, everything. It's a beer town because they're all from Germany. What about out here? Norway, Norwegian, Sweden. This is, we have more of a cultural connection in the Midwest with Germany than we do with England. So at the beginning of the war, we do not have a preference for England or Germany. Many of our German folks are actually sympathetic with what Germany is doing. Many of our American non-Germans are not sympathetic, so we're divided over this. But our history is isolationism. The United States does not have alliances. This kind of fits in with our romantic ideological view, because we believe that everyone should be treated the same. So every country should have a vote, not just because they have an alliance, because England and France are militarily powerful. We should be able to talk to Germany, even if we still talk to England and France. We should trade with both of these guys. We shouldn't have an alliance. And so for the United States, we were diplomatically isolated. That's what set us apart from what's going on in Europe. These folks, are they diplomatically isolated?
I think it'd be a
What
little
were the
harder.
alliances that we had in 1900? You what?
No,
I said it would be a little hard if they were.
because they're all right there.
So when I go back to this is where it all started because of the military buildup. The biggest countries militarily are Germany and England, right? The United States isn't here because we are. It's not that we're not military. It's that that is not our. It's not our focus.
Yeah.
So we aren't concerned about what's going on in Europe. We are literally keeping out of what's going on in Europe. That makes sense? Okay. So Germany and England are the biggest powerhouses. Are they in alliance? So let's talk about which sides are on which sides. How are these people connected?
I know.
So who is England's best friend?
France.
Okay, England and France. And the funny thing is that they weren't before.
Yeah, best friends that anyone can
Who else is England and France's best friend? The Belgians, right? So these guys are all in an alliance.
The Trinity.
Okay, let's put another color here for the other side. So who would also be a natural alliance here?
Germany and Austria.
Okay, clearly Germany and Austria are in alliance. Okay, now let's add to this. Who else is in alliance? So if we look at Germany and alliance, one way to figure out alliances is to figure out who they don't like.
Well, Russia, I would say would be.
I don't think
They
think
don't
Russia-
like Russia. No, Germany and Austria does
Isn't
not
Russia
like
like on its own side?
No, not yet. We'll talk about this. Who also doesn't like Russia? The Ottomans don't like the Russians. And so who are going to be connected
So
here?
Ottoman and
Germany, Austria, and the Ottomans, okay? They're going to be in agreement, so they're on the same side. What about Italy?
Italy. I think that joins Russia.
Italy is actually going to still be on
Or not
their
Russia.
side,
I saw Prussia and I was like, thinking
but
Russia.
let me tell you, they're going to not join in the war.
Yeah.
So they will be in agreement with Germany and Austria and the Ottomans because they're this group, because they don't want Russia to come in here. But when the war starts, they're not going to get involved. They're going to be
Germany
neutral.
destroyed an Italian ship in the war.
Yeah, because they didn't get into the war. They chose not to, right? They chose
I
not
know.
to. But, and Germany's very upset about this, so is Austria upset about this, because up until the very evening of the war, Italy said, yeah, we got your back.
Bunch of
And then,
Nazis.
and then they said they're going to be neutral. Okay. Now, what about Russia? Where is Russia?
Russia's,
Often its own little word.
Russia, I mean, Russia's part of the Allies, but like,
They are on the English side. And why would they be on the English
Because
side?
they don't
they
like
hate-
the
because
Ottomans
they don't-
and-
because they don't like Ottoman.
Well, they certainly don't like the Ottoman and the Austrians, so that's clear. But why would they support the English and the French?
Because then if, like, they win, he can just,
Well, you got to look at this as a picture. So I drew this out here.
Because then they can get them from both sides.
They can get it from both sides. This isn't ideology. In terms of our constitutionalism, England and France are constitutional systems. These guys are constitutional. What about Russia? Is Russia constitutional? No. Russia has a czar. They're basically a dictatorship. But we're not looking at this ideologically. This is an example of pragmatism. You do what works. They don't care that Russia is ruled by a czar. They don't really care about the local politics of any of these countries. What they care about is that if we get both sides of Germany and Austria is going to have a harder time because they're going to have two different fronts. Do you see how that's a practical, it's a pragmatic approach? And the reason why Ottoman's involved, Austria does not love Ottomans, but for the same reason. If they get involved, that means Russia is going to have two different forces against them.
they may not like each other, but they have like the same goals.
The enemy of my enemy is my
my
friend.
yeah.
And so what we're looking here is what's called a balance of power. And in this case, it really is balanced. So these folks are on one side, and those folks are in the middle. That makes sense? So we sometimes refer to these as the central powers. And why do we call these the allied powers? Or it's because they're in an alliance? Aren't these guys in an alliance also? This is a really easy answer. Nobody even thinks about this, but I'll give you the easy answer. They're called the allies because in the end, which one do we ally?
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's why we call them the allies. They're our allies. But that's not how they would be looked. The Germans
Do
wouldn't
they
call
say
them.
that?
No, the Germans wouldn't call them the allied powers.
Well, no.
If you're in the alliance, you would say they're our allies, right? If you're Germany and you talk about our allies, you're talking about Austria and Ottomans. They are called the central powers. This is what we call them, the allied powers, but that's because it's later, it's from our perspective. It just is a way of distinguishing.